Here's a collection of rather different cars that you can have for about the same money, and if you were going shopping today, which one would be yours? Or if you were going shopping for a practical family car or a fleet car for your business, which one of the current crop would be top of that list? Let's start with the executive toys first, and let's start at the top of the list with the newish Mercedes CLK, which made its world debut at Geneva last year and went on sale last autumn. We tend to accept that BMW is the class leader for chassis dynamics and power delivery, while Mercedes remains a delight for drivers who have no desire to feel vibrant contact with the road at every twist and turn. Yet the longer and windier the road that leads to your door, the more they enjoy the way Mercedes smooths it for them without sacrificing too much haste. And they've got the surroundings to make the most of it. The C-Class is a very comfortable and well-appointed environment from which to command your electronic troops. And as you relax in leather and walnut luxury, you can take extra comfort as headlamp assists and rain sensors take care of details. Distronic cruise control sorts out the boring stuff on motorways. The keyless go access control keeps the ruffians out and lets you in with ease. And the Linguatronic voice control system operates telephone and hi-fi systems at your merest whisper. And it has all the driving toys, ABS and endless chassis control systems, along with sequential gear shift, parking sensors, and so on and so on. Engine choices are plentiful too, and of course the attractive opening price, say a bit more than €40,000, is driven upwards in proportion to increased cylinders, horsepower and performance numbers, until it peaks with the V8 AMG version. Even given the excellence of the newest C-Class chassis, it seems unlikely that the coupe is going to hit BMW's 3 Series in the place where it lives, on the limit. The two rivals continue to offer the different things they each do best, so it looks as if that could be a tough one to call, with BMW's appeal perhaps a little lower down the age range. And now for something completely different. At first glance, the Audi TT looks like it came from a jelly mould, and the second look confirms it. In any colour but silver, which is how the show car first appeared, it looks like it ought to have a flavour as well, but the impression that this is some kind of sweetie applies only to its road manners. This is a real car with all the benefits of quattro and turbo technology pioneered by Audi. It's almost certainly the best car in the range, and luckily once you're inside it, you can forget about what it looks like from the outside. However, the same fetish for design purity that has smoothed the exterior makes this Audi's best ever interior as well, and that's saying something. Everything in the TT has been designed to be aesthetically perfect, painstakingly ground from the same aluminium billet from which the body itself was sculpted. While the Mercedes and the BMW interiors may be paragons of good ergonomics, this Audi has blended the best of that particular science with a no-holds-barred approach to the detail work, to the extent that it's almost too much, especially with a low roofline that makes you feel as if you've just been posted, like a letter inside a letterbox. But no postal delivery is this quick. 220 horsepower from a blown 2-litre engine launches you to 100 kilometres an hour pretty quickly, and the chip-limited top speed is equally satisfying. And it's practical too, although you'd stop short of calling it a 4-seater, even if it has got 4 seats. Apart from that low roofline that makes getting in and out a moment to pause for thought if you're anything like tall, the TT is eminently drivable and eminently usable. On the road, any car with four-wheel drive is going to feel good, and the TT is no exception to that. The latest versions have the boot lid flip-up that's supposed to cure its alleged tendency to reverse into the scenery at high speed, but there's certainly no evidence of such a desire on this one. Instead, it clings like glue and corners on those trusty road test cliches, railway lines. Four-wheel drive does impart the go-kart quality to road holding regardless of what it's applied to, but Audi pioneered the system for road cars in the original rally bed Quattro all those years ago, and you get all the benefits in the unmistakable shape of the TT. Individual's one way to describe it, but whatever you say about the shape, it doesn't fit the mould of the rest of the cars in this lineup. Volvo C70 isn't new, but it does take the Scandinavian manufacturer into Mercedes and BMW territory. The S70 is the formal saloon, if you like, but the C70 is the more rakish version, an elegant two-door coupe with looks that put it on an equal footing with anything else in this lineup, even though it's been around since 1998. BMW and Mercedes owners are the natural target for conquest sales, and Volvo's sporty aims are served by the 2.5 turbo in its high-pressure mode. And with 100 kilometres an hour coming up in just over 6 seconds, it can be a real tarmac shredder, although with chassis dynamics by TWR, it should have better manners. Inside, it's pure Volvo, and if you can find anything to complain about, then start writing now and expect to be in a minority. The chassis is a tuned-up version of the saloon, and the dashboard too is derived straight from the same source, and so misses out on the golden opportunity to make the coupe driving experience a bit special when viewed from the angle that matters most to most people most of the time, behind the wheel. But there's nothing missing in the way of features, and it's still a lot of car for the money. OK, it's not in the same league as BMW when it comes to ragged edge road holding, in that the Volvo's ragged edge is just a bit more ragged than the German class leader in this field. But the C70 is still a very enjoyable car to drive, and perhaps best viewed as a sporty car rather than a sports car, it's a great success. The basic solidity of the saloon car base really plays a trump card for Volvo, in that it allows them to offer a convertible with none of the scuttle shake which can afflict chop-top convertibles if you're not lucky. And everything we've just said about the driving experience in the hardtop applies just as readily to the convertible, including the fact that it's not ready to challenge the class leaders when the B roads start to get really twisty. But the 3 Series ragtop may not be on your shopping list with the Volvo. It is a cheaper alternative, but a slightly slower one as well. So maybe the only rival you'd think about would be the CLK. You'll pay more for the Mercedes, of course. And though you might get it back on resale, what you'll also get is another car that's not quite at the sharp end of the performance or handling envelopes, but which does have that Mercedes-Benz cachet. But Volvo has a certain amount of badge prestige too, and it comes equipped with all the toys you want and all the ones you hadn't even thought of as an option. Of course, we're being ultra-critical because there's no question that any of the 3 rivals, hardtop or ragtop, will provide you with enjoyable motoring, solid reliability, and a good resale value as well. Recently revised in appearance, but only mildly, BMW's 3 Series is one of those benchmark cars which you have to consider when you're making your shopping list, and against which all others must be judged. And BMW claims that the latest version is the best 3 Series ever. Along with some significant changes to suspension and steering, all of them have new engines that pretty much transform the entire range, lifting its smooth driving pleasure up towards flawless excellence, and at the same time shaking off competition in the segment from Mercedes, Audi, and to a lesser extent, perhaps Volvo. BMW has a word for the transformation and calls it Valvetronic. It's a complex system that, in simple terms, lets the engine breathe better. And the immediate benefit is a 10% gain in performance and economy, a massive leap that you can expect all other car makers to imitate as soon as possible. The battle in this small executive saloon segment means that every tax advantage is as highly prized as every letter I on every nameplate. And with tax breaks now based on a compendium that includes engine size and carbon monoxide emissions, engine efficiency has become as vital to the cause as engine size and fuel injection. There's still an estate version of the 3 Series, or a touring version as BMW call it, and to an extent that served as a warning without explaining the philosophy, because the extra carrying capacity of this car is well short of its class rivals, making its load area something of an empty gesture. But it drives like a BMW, and quite frankly, there isn't a great deal else that needs to be said. Already renowned as a marvel, the latest 3 adds a faster steering rack and new suspension settings for springs and dampers, answering the demand for still better driving feel. And it's stepped up a level in ride comfort as well. It's raised the game in this segment of the market, leaving its rivals for dead in just about every quantifiable comparison. From small executive saloons to regular family cars, we go to a shrinking market segment that strangely seems to offer increased choice. Though there are fewer and fewer of this type of car being sold in Europe, competition for the family and business car business remains intense. It's no exaggeration to say that this car is the single most important new model for Opel in the past 10 years. Partly because Opel is losing ground to its rivals across the board, partly because the previous Vectra failed to please the vital business car users, and also because the entire segment is slowly shrinking. But why choose this car over the class-leading Mondeo or one of the many Japanese-made alternatives, or something a bit radical like Citroen's new C5? Mainly because it really is a very good car. It had a big job to do because the existing class leader, the recently revamped Mondeo, was exceptionally good, a standout success on the road and in terms of its massive interior. As is often true with Opel, the hatchback is better looking than the saloon, and that's good in a market where hatch sales run well ahead of saloons. But both have the same cavernous interior, and the Opel packaging has managed to defeat the Ford. Dynamically too, it's good, following on from the success of the Astra chassis. It's quieter and more refined than the Ford as well, and though its motorway-oriented gearing may be a little too tall for some tastes, that's about the only real criticism you'll hear about what appears to be the right car for this market segment, and what is essentially a good car as well. Mondeo remains a worthy class leader, a combination of good looks, massive amounts of interior space, and a chassis that's as close to perfect as it gets. It's an all-rounder with space, and more space as its key feature. Though it's been a big success, its appeal may be a little dated, especially in the all-important fleet sector that's bread and butter to all big car makers, where they have to sell well if they want to have jam, and where Mondeo numbers had been steadily falling. It was the details that needed refining, and the new, longer, wider and heavier Mondeo has a bigger passenger cabin full of bigger, better and sturdier fitments. It's a definite quality improvement. Not quite possessed of the chassis dynamics of the marvellous Focus, it is a bigger car after all. Mondeo drives well, feels right and is bound to meet with approval. But it's been pipped for top honours by the Vectra, no doubt about it. Funky new styling inside and out has brought lots of accolades for the new shape Primera. High levels of equipment and the cute styling from Nissan's British-based designers are its hallmarks in this group, and for those reasons, plus the excellent reputation of the previous model, it's bound to sell in good numbers. But it shouldn't really be a threat to the Mondeo or to the new Vectra. It's built on the same base platform as the X-Trail off-roader, and you have to say that it shows. Sadly, the Primera doesn't drive as nicely as the Ford or the Vauxhall, and it's not as practical either. It comes with a good collection of gadgets, but to do well against the mainstream, Primera must not only be awash with high-tech whatnottery, but also full of emptiness. Vectra and Mondeo's biggest plus points are the vast amount of space in the boot, the rear seat and in the front. And that's exactly where the Nissan loses out to both of them. The C5 is Citroën's replacement for the 8-year-old Xantia, and you can tell straight away from its look that it's taken the unconventional approach to the segment, and not just in Citroën's continuing loyalty to the hydraulic suspension. As its taller, squarer shape suggests, it's brilliant for space and comfort, but a bit vague on the road if you're enthusiastic. So its best point is a huge and spacious interior, but it's still hardly the basis for mass market appeal. But the C5 is a large car for the segment, and that does translate into good interior space and comfort for passengers. The hatchback is joined by an estate version, which is also big and, again, especially on the inside. Citroën chose to retain its unique hydractive suspension system, and though it is brilliant for passengers, it is all about ride comfort and simply wasn't designed to be pin-sharp in the mountain hairpins, and so it isn't. But it is the best solution to ride smoothness and comfort that Citroën has ever produced, though it tends to deaden out the sort of road feedback that lets a driver feel the car. Uninvolved is probably the best way to describe it. Drivers may not enjoy it too much, but there will be few complaints, and none from the backseat about ride comfort, that's for sure. Keenly priced and clearly aimed at the space and comfort brigade, the C5 deserves to succeed for Citroën, even though it's a funny-looking thing to modern eyes. And that's the one thing we haven't touched on so far. C5 is styled to express its dimensions and comfort from the outside. It actually looks bigger than it is, and presumably it's meant to. And its exterior lines are as quirkily Citroën as its unusual suspension arrangement. Some might even say it's ugly, but it's definitely different. There are many offerings from Japan in the segment. Apart from Primera, the new Camry is one, and this is another, Honda's undervalued Accord. There was a tiny facelift last year, cosmetic detailing, noticeable only to members of the Honda Accord fan club. Plus there were some chassis revisions aimed at smoothing out the turns, softening the motorway ride and taking a little bit of vibration out of the steering. The basic chassis is a good one. Perhaps not quite on a par with the Mondeo for sheer composure, but easily better than most other obvious competitors. Plus, it does have a sharp accuracy when it comes to changing direction that Mondeo just can't match. Indeed, the Accord range runs new Mondeo a close second in so many areas it almost robs the Ford of a crown it ought to have won by miles, thanks to that massively big interior, its superb engines and excellent ride. But the Honda holds its value better too, making it still better news for private buyers. The baseline is a good one then, although the latest European offerings have something of an edge in terms of refinement. Little things like induction roar and wind noises that gradually add up to become annoying. But in general, what we're looking at here is a good range of cars which all offer good value for your money. Mazda's 626 wasn't the world's most inspiring car, but before you dismiss its successor, the new 6 from this group, it's worth knowing that Mazda has changed much more than the name. All else aside, it's another reflection of the recent Japanese understanding that Europe is the most critical car market in the world, and so the Mazda is another car designed with that in mind, and the effect is surprisingly pleasant. Perhaps most surprising is the way that its round-town stiffness is replaced by a motorway poise that's only slightly let down by wind noise around the cabin, and a B-road finesse to make Mondeo owners jealous. In fact, the new Mazda 6 is a rather more joyful affair and comes to us bigger all over, especially under the bonnet, where a quick raid on the Ford parts bin has produced a fairly acceptable 3-litre V6 engine for top-of-the-range clients, or a rather less pushy 2.3 4-pot engineered by Mazda. The 6 is still slightly smaller than its two domestic rivals from Toyota and Nissan, and yet it looks and feels very spacious inside. Leg and headroom in the rear is more than acceptable, while luggage space is more or less on a par with the other two. It has to compete against mainstream Europeans, though, not just the Japanese rivals, but like so many, it's been designed and engineered for the job, and it's priced right as well. It's got style and individuality, and if you don't go and try one, you'll be overlooking a very good car.